this video, I'm going to walk you through step by step how to set up WebinarJam for your webinars. So if you don't know what WebinarJam is basically a platform that you use for hosting live webinars, evergreen webinars, and so on and so forth. And unlike every other setup tutorial you'll find on the internet or on YouTube right now, this is not just going to be a list of action steps that you can easily find from other videos. I'm also going to be peppering in secret settings that we use in WebinarJam to maximize show up rates for our clients, to maximize revenue for our clients. And I'll be sharing with you our webinar best practices that we've used to make our clients multiple six figures from webinars. So it's pretty simple to set up. So once you buy a subscription, you're going to be thrown to this page where you have like live webinar and ever webinar. So we'll go through both of them. It's basically the same systems for both, but there's some specific things you need to pay attention to when it comes to the evergreen webinar. So you basically want to start by clicking on access, and then once you click on access, you're going to see a page that looks very similar to this. If you come to analytics, this is where you can break down your data, and I'll walk you through that too as well to show you how to track your data properly and how to really do it in a way where you're not deceiving yourself when it comes to the data. So stay tuned for that. You can see your registrants here, and then you can see training here too as well, where you can get even more insight. So now, unlike the training you're going to find here, this doesn't have like the secret settings I'm going to share with you that will allow you to truly maximize your revenue with your webinars. So to create a webinar, basically what you need to do is add webinar. You never want to use express configuration. You basically want to use full configuration. And then when you click on full configuration here, then you can now click on schedule for later. You don't want to click right now because that's not what you're trying to do. You're trying to build a webinar where you only need to show up once a week, twice a week, or once every 2 weeks or anything, and you deliver the webinar to the audience pretty much. So schedule for later is what you would typically choose. And the webinar name here doesn't really matter because it's what you're going to see internally. It doesn't matter for your audience specifically. So you want to basically just call it whatever you want to call it. So let's just say test webinar. We like to put the date of the webinar in front because if you're going to be doing multiple webinars, then you're going to need a way to quickly identify which webinar is for which. And then when you're looking at your analytics too as well, you want to easily be able to identify which webinar you are trying to get the analytics for and so on and so forth. So you always want to put the date of the webinar itself on there. So let's imagine our webinar is today, Saturday, and let's just say 7/18. So now the title for the webinar is very important because this one, your customers are actually going to see this. So we always just use a shorter version of the main headline that we have on the page. So there's congruency between the opt-in page and them actually clicking on the webinar thing for them to register for the webinar. So let's say we call this how to start an Amazon FBA business, FBA biz without startup capital. So you always want your headlines to be how to achieve dream outcome without the thing that you don't want, right? And you want to basically make your headline be that. That's the best kind of webinar headlines that we found. So how to achieve the outcome that they want the most without the thing that scares them the most, the thing they don't want the most, and so on and so forth. And then for description, I usually don't bother with this, but just add a sub headline, all my system for launching your Amazon biz. So here you want to basically use some type of thing where you say, oh, your system that got you X results, the system that took me from a minus $1,000 bank account to becoming a millionaire at 20, or the system that took me from making only $45 an hour to becoming a millionaire at 25. So you basically want to have like a clear dream outcome where it takes them from your zero story to your hero story, and you're saying you're going to give them that system on the webinar. So that's how you want to think about your description. Then for presenters, it's important to actually have yourself, and then if you have a moderator, you want to add the moderator too as well here, because the moderator is the one who is going to respond back to chat, remove people that are just being annoying in the chat box, and so on and so forth. And then the streaming service is always going to be WebinarJam Live compared to like YouTube Live and stuff like that. So keep in mind, when you get to a point where you're having over 1,000+ people live in the room with you, and you start to get some serious traffic through this, WebinarJam is not going to be sustainable for that. because the platform does tend to have like crashes and stuff from time to time. So if you're going to have webinars where you have 1,000, 2,000 plus people live in the room with you, then you're going to need to use Zoom webinar. That's more reliable to use than WebinarJam. But if you're just getting started, you only have about 1,000 plus registrants, you're getting about 300, 400 people live in the room with you, WebinarJam is still going to work really effectively for that. But when you get to a point where you're having thousands of people in the live room, then you want to explore other ways of Zoom webinar specifically. Then for the webinar thumbnail, I just tend to use the creator's image. So just try to compress that so the image is not too big, but just use the founder's image here and then you should be good to go. So once we do that, we can now go to the schedules now. So schedules is basically where you just choose the time and day for the webinar itself, and it's just pretty simple and straightforward, right? We already have all of this done. And then for the schedules, you want to use one single session. If you choose multiple sessions, you're going to have friction and you're going to have decision fatigue, and you're going to lose some prospects due to that. If you do a recurring series of sessions, you don't need to do that unless you're doing a challenge or something like that. So this is just a webinar. It's going to be one single session. And then if you want to now have the webinar the following week, you basically just clone the previous one, change the title, and then you're good to go for the next week. But one thing to note with this though is when you clone the webinars, we've had cases in the past where we clone webinars for a client and then all the emails in the WebinarJam sequence don't deliver. It happens from time to time. So you want to make sure that you're not always cloning. Let's say if you clone twice, then you make a brand new one from scratch once, so that you don't have a situation where all the emails in your automation basically don't deliver. So we've had that happen for a few clients before and it was just a nightmare. So let's just select today as the date for the webinar and let's select tomorrow. So there's no errors here. And let's say Eastern time. You want to use the time zone that you're in, so it's easy for you to know. And this one is very important, time zone conversion, just so whoever is opting in, if the person is in Pacific, they don't have to do the conversions in their mind. They basically know what it is already before they opt in for the webinar. So this helps a lot too as well. So you add and then you should be good to go from here. You save up here and then you click on next. So when it comes to the registration page, we tend to create our own registration pages. We don't rely on the WebinarJam registration page. You can create that on Go High Level. Although with Go High Level these days, you don't want to use the custom like blocks from Go High Level. You basically want to build the HTML on a different platform, like Claude Code or Claude itself, and then you copy the HTML code and then put that in Go High Level. That way you get a faster page load speed than you would if you create the platform or the opt-in page with Go High Level's custom builder. So you don't want to do that because that just has like a very shitty page speed, which is going to reduce your opt-in rates. So you want to basically choose that your own custom design here, so you don't even have to worry about this. Registration form fields, you only need first name, email. You want to remove country and the likes. Add phone number. If you're launching this for the first time and you're just really trying to maximize volume, which is getting as many registrants as possible, I don't make phone number mandatory just because I want people to opt in. If I get your name and email alone, that's good for me. So, but if you're doing this and you want to add more friction, and let's say your opt-in rate is about 40% and you want to now add more friction, then you can now make your phone number mandatory. But if you have a shitty opt-in rate, then why are you adding phone number? It makes no sense, because just improve the opt-in rate instead. Also, phone numbers are very important for reminders and SMS follow-ups like I will show you here. But if you have a shitty opt-in rate, then don't even bother with this really. Just make it non-mandatory. Have it there, but don't make it mandatory. Those that want to put it will put it. Those that don't want to put it won't put it. So save as well. Also subscription to future webinars. I like to turn this on, especially if you are going to have multiple webinars for this client and it's going to be consistent. So they can choose that option if they want to or not. It depends on them completely. And then free registration, of course. This one, you don't need this because it's when you're getting about 1,000 plus registrants per webinar, you're going to get a ton of notifications in your email for this. So you don't need this pretty much. This one, you don't need this as well. You don't need this. Single opt-in is basically what you need to do. So now for the email platform, where you're going to get the best deliverability, at least from our experience, is going to be the WebinarJam deliverability, because Google recognizes this. Same thing if you're using Zoom too as well. So the Zoom deliverability is going to be the one that you will get literally the best results from. So you want to make sure that the confirmation email that you are going to receive and some of the key reminders you're going to be sending are all going to be coming from WebinarJam itself. And then your other email assets, because if you want to maximize your show rates for your webinars, you're going to need to have some indoctrination emails where you basically break their beliefs, you tell your story, you address their objections, you share testimonials and case studies. All of that can be sent from either ConvertKit or from a different platform. But your main confirmation email, the first one they receive once they opt in, you can have that go out from WebinarJam, just so you can maximize the amount of people that actually see that email. And then the email you send to them when you're about to go live, you can also send that one from WebinarJam too as well. But the remaining ones you send, all of the good stuff like your indoctrination emails, like I said earlier, all of that should ideally come from your email sending platform like ConvertKit and so on and so forth. So that's what you want to choose here. To set up this with ConvertKit so that you can have the live room link straight into ConvertKit directly, and you can even literally differentiate attendees those versus non-attendees and so on and so forth, then you need to connect your ConvertKit to WebinarJam here. And to do that is really simple. You want to just click on integrate your own autoresponder and then click on ConvertKit, right? And then you're going to grab your API key and secret key from ConvertKit, and then you come here and click on connect. So if you come to settings in your ConvertKit, basically you're going to find the API keys. I don't want to open this because it's personal, right? You're going to find the API keys and then you copy and paste it here. Yes, you copy and paste it here. You click on connect, and then you can now create specific tags in ConvertKit, and then you now create the conditions here. And then this is where you also set up your DKIM and SMTP and so on and so forth. And the reason is because you don't want to use the WebinarJam default email sender for too long. If you're building the webinar for the first time, then you can rely on this WebinarJam default email sender, and you just want to get this started. Like this client is very new, for example, so we don't need to worry about this yet. But as you continue to do this, you want to eventually add your own domain to WebinarJam, so you can start sending those emails from your own domain instead. And then once you create a webinar, you're going to see these default confirmation messages, right? Literally these two that are here. Leave these ones as it is. The only thing I would do here is change it from webinar to a masterclass, and then just look through the copy as well and change it from webinar to masterclass, just because webinar is a marketing buzzword now, and your audience don't even know what webinar means. And some of them that know what it means, they're already kind of scarred by the word webinar. So you want to use masterclass instead. That's the only thing you want to change here. And then you now go and add reminders. So I like to add reminders too as well that I actually write the copy for. We have 24 hours before reminder, and maybe 48 hours before reminder, 3 hours before, the day of, 1 hour before, and so on and so forth. All of the reminders, you basically want to write the copy for those here too as well, because you're going to get the best delivery with this. And then when you now go to your ConvertKit, you can now send your indoctrination emails from ConvertKit, and those ones don't even have to have like time bound or anything like that. So we just do about 2-3 emails a day for 3 days straight, where I just literally providing value, sharing case studies, answering objections, and so on and so forth, to truly maximize the show operates on this. And in addition to these two as well, you want to basically have some retargeting ads that are reminding people to show up. You want to have some ads that are going out to people that register and trying to educate them too as well on objections, share some more testimonials, and so on and so forth with your ads too. And then you now also want to have SMS, where you send a bunch of SMSs to these people to try and get them to show up. So you want to send SMS when they opt in, 48 hours before, 24 hours before, 1 hour before you go live, when you're live, 15 minutes into when you're already live. Literally as high as 6 to 7 SMSs is what you want to send to these people to make sure they actually show up. And then you can also use ringless voicemail to really maximize your show operation on this. So a lot of things go into this if you want prospects to show up. And SMS, indoctrination emails from your normal email sending platform, reminder emails from WebinarJam here, and then the default confirmation email from WebinarJam too as well. And like I said, when you're just starting out, you can still use this default WebinarJam thing, but as you continue to grow, when you do your first, second, third webinar, you can now start using your own domain and test it, because sometimes when you add your own domain to this, the open rate will not be as great as if you're using WebinarJam to do this. So make sure you test it too as well. So that's basically that for this section here. And then you can click on next. For this one, this is where you connect your email sending platform. If you're using GHL, you don't have that option here. So you're going to need to use Zapier to connect your WebinarJam to GHL. If you're using GHL to send your emails. And then if you're using any of these other platforms, it's pretty easy to connect it to WebinarJam as well. For third-party tracking, if you're running Facebook ads, they basically want to add your tracking codes here so that you can send back webinar registrants to Meta. And that will be really good for you to get some, to condition your pixel and to really maximize results on this on this note. And the next thing here is the thank you page. So your thank you page, you want to create your own default thank you page. The structure that we have for this is very simple. You want to have a video, and that video you just set frame. And what that means is you tell them what to expect, you encourage them to show up, and you give them some action items. So we like to add them to a WhatsApp or a Telegram group or a Discord channel, whichever one works for you. And then we like to get them a link to add the event to their calendar too as well. So we like to do those two things, and then that's pretty much it. And then if you want to take it one step further, you can now have what we call breakout videos, where you address their likely objections on the confirmation page too as well. So those are the three main things that you ideally want to have on your confirmation page. So you can't build that in WebinarJam. You have to build that separately. And once you build that page, you would choose your own custom page here, and then you just paste the link here for sure. You don't need this one. It just adds more friction. And then you don't need this one as well. So we do that, and then we go to the next page. So the next one is going to be the integration and stuff for the live room. So you don't need this. Just disable this pretty much. You don't autoplay. You don't need this. You want to give them control. So there's going to be a big play button in front once they click the link to join the webinar, and then that's all you basically need for that. Full screen button, yeah, enabled so as well. You don't need this. You don't need this. Polls and quizzes, we rarely use this because you could just ask them to put it in the chat, so you don't want to add too much complexity. For product offers, we rarely even use this as well, just because we put the link in the chat with the moderator. But if you want to add this, you can do that so as well. It's pretty simple. You basically put the name of your offer here. Let's just use test name. Your offer headline, you put that here. You upload like a product mockup. Make sure you compress it, and then you add like, yes, I'm in, and then you add the URL. So that once you drop your offer, you can basically just click a button in WebinarJam, and it will show everything for you pretty much. It will show the offer to the prospect, and then the prospects can click the link, and then they'll be able to purchase the offer as well. And then video injections. If you want to play like testimonials and stuff, you can use this, because if you try to play a video straight from your slides, it's not going to work, right? So you need to basically use this if you want to play a video. Although we don't recommend playing videos in webinars because it slows down the pace. Just have a picture of the person and the quote of what they said, and then you're good to go. You don't need to have a video inside of your webinars. For this one, you don't really need this. Or if you want to share like a file or like a bonus or a freebie, you can do this one as well. So you can share a freebie with them, but you don't really need that. When we do use freebies, we just get the link itself and we put that in the chat for the prospects. And then slide presentation. So if you are going to be using presenter notes with your slides on the screen, then you can't use this feature, because with this feature, you won't be able to see your presenter notes in the back end of this. So if you use this feature, literally, you won't be able to see your presenter notes. But if you don't need presenter notes, then you can upload your stuff here. Just make sure you do this way earlier, because it takes time to upload the presentation, right? So if you're going to be using presenters notes, what you basically want to do instead is, once you get into the live room in WebinarJam, when you're doing your test, you basically want to share your screen, and then you only share your main slide, and then you keep your presenter notes to the side, right? So that you can still see your presenter notes, and the audience will only be seeing your screen, and then you can read straight from your presenter notes. But if you are not using presenter notes at all, and everything you want to say is on the slides itself, then you can upload your slides in here. Just make sure you do it way in advance, like I said, so that it can fully upload before the webinar itself actually starts, right? And then webinar replay recording, you can enable this, but we don't use the default WebinarJam replay. We create our own custom replay page. And the reason is because you can't edit the replays with this one, because we like to crop the beginning of the replay and some parts of the end, just so once they get into this, they can start watching the presentation from when the actual presentation starts. So we don't want to have any fluff in the replay, just to maximize the replay rate on this. Plus, there's other things that we like to do to the video too as well, to make sure that it has the best possible experience. So you can't do all of that with the default WebinarJam replays. And then we like to have the call to action button right below the replay video, and a bunch of other features that we like to add. So that's why we host the replays outside of WebinarJam. So we just download the replays. I'll show you how to download that right after this. And then once you download the replay, you upload it into Wistia or Vimeo or any of those platforms. You crop out the parts you want to crop, then you put it on a replay page, and that's the link you now send them to if they want to watch the replay, right? And then that's basically what you need to do for the live webinar. So a couple of things that I want to touch on before we kind of move on here. So the first one is how to download the replays themselves. So if you come to your links and you come to replay, you're going to be able to download the replay. Let me choose another webinar. So you come to your links, you come to replay, you choose the session, you can download the video here, and then you can now upload this into Vimeo or any of those platforms, and then you should be good to go. The second thing is, if you want to actually start the webinar, right? This is your link still as well. You come to presenters, and then this is the actual live room that will take you into the live room as the presenter. And then if you have a moderator, right, you want to also have them get access to this through this place too as well, so that they can enter into the room with their camera off and their mics off, so that they can moderate the chat on your behalf. And then the direct room for the live audience, you can find that here, right? And then if you want to now embed the call to action button or like a form that you can fill for them to automatically opt in into WebinarJam, this is where you want to come to. So you have multiple different options here. We either do the embed form, right, where you basically see this on your opt-in page and somebody can opt in directly from here, and you just need to copy this code to set it up, or we use the button instead. So it's either of those two things that we like to use on people's page. We don't use this bubble thing or the bar, it doesn't work and convert as well. We either use the embed form or we use the button, so that people can actually register for the webinar from inside of the funnel builder that you have. So this is where you get that page button from as well. And then if you want to run a test version, you basically want to click on run a test here, and that's not going to affect anything pretty much because it's a test, and it's not going to affect your actual webinar. Just be careful not to use the actual live room link when you're just trying to do a test, because if not, you're going to basically get cooked without any, like you're going to ruin the webinar pretty much, because you're going to start the webinar with nobody on there, and once you end it, that's the end of the webinar. So you have to be careful that you actually use run a test as an option here. And then once you're in the live room itself, there's going to be a call button at the top left corner that you're going to use to start the broadcast. You basically want to click on that button, and that's what signals the actual start of the presentation itself, right? And then finally, your analytics is another very important thing. So let's choose like a random webinar here that we did for a partner, and let's try and audit the analytics together. So you're going to see your number of registrants, you're going to see your show up rate here, and so on and so forth. This was just a test webinar that we did for a client. Your show up rate, the number you have here is not your actual show up rate or your actual number of attendees. What you want to use when you're tracking your metrics is the amount of people you had at the peak of the webinar. That's how you track your actual show up rate for the actual data here. So you don't want to use this random number here. This is not the real show up rate, because this is just people that are joining. How many people joined the webinar total? And that doesn't do you any favors. So you want to know how many people were on the webinar at the peak of the webinar, and that's this number here. So for this webinar, for example, we actually had 56 people that were at the peak of the webinar. That's what you want to use. And then your retention to pitch, that's how many people stayed until the pitch. You basically want to find the time that you started pitching, find out how many people were there. So for here, it was 44 people that were there at the time we started pitching. And then you want to basically do 44 divided by 56 times 100. So like this webinar, for example, had a 78% retention to pitch rate, right? And that's going to give you the ideal KPI for this is 80%. So most people will track this and they'll think they have a good show up rate when they don't actually do. But what you're going to track is this one here. And that's how you're going to know your true show up rate to the webinar. And then yes, every other thing is pretty standard. And then you can see your metrics for your email reminders and stuff. You can find all of that here too as well. So for Evergreen, it's pretty much the same. The only difference here is you need to actually upload the actual Evergreen video that you want to use. So if you click on add webinar, you have external video file. For some reason, the only type of platform that works for this, if you're using an external video file, is a Vimeo video. The platform is Vimeo. For some reason, that's what we found. You can use Vimeo for this. And I don't typically want to use this because, again, I want to have control over what they see in the replay. So I want to crop the beginning, crop the end, crop the part I don't want them to see before I give them access to the replay. So the same is true for this one, right? And then basic settings here is where you just type in the webinar name and stuff. So let's just say test. Basically the same thing we did for the live webinar. The only difference here is the fact that you need to add what you want to use for the replay. So let's just select like a random session. And then I think another very important thing here is the schedules, right? So for this one, you have multiple different options in terms of the schedules. Best that we found is just choosing the same way you would do your normal live webinars, choosing the same day and time. Let's say you do your webinars weekly on Wednesdays, for example, basically choosing Wednesday at a particular time So it just almost assumes that the webinar is also live when it's not actually live. You don't have to say free live masterclass on your opt-in pages and stuff, so you don't lie to people. But we basically want to choose the day and time the webinar actually starts itself when you have your normal live webinars. That's how you want to set this one up. If you have a short webinar, like a mini webinar that is about 30 minutes long or about 40 minutes long, then you want to use the just-in-time option, right? Where you do the webinar every 15 minutes. That's very important. If you have a much shorter webinar that is a micro webinar, but if it's a full-on 2-hour webinar, 1 hour plus webinar, then you want to choose a particular day and time for it to start every single week or even every single day. So we have some clients, or we've had clients in the past that do their webinars every day, the evergreen, at a specific time every single day. So let's say 8 p.m. every single day, for example. You can set it up like that too as well. And that's going to really help you for your evergreen. So that's what you need to know here. Every other thing is basically the same. And yeah, that's how you set things up with your webinars on WebinarJam. So if you want us to help you with the webinar itself, the webinar slides, the script, the technical setup, getting your traffic to your webinars from paid ads, there's going to be a link in the description to work one-on-one with me and my team to help you build this entire system inside of your business. You can check that out if you want. And if you found value in this video, make sure you like the video, subscribe, and check out the other videos on this channel that will show you how to grow your online education business with virtual events like webinars or challenges. Thank you for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.